Hey there, welcome to the Mental Perk podcast. I'm Carla Hutcherson, licensed professional counselor.
And I'm Brandy Mock, entrepreneur, author, and community leader. And we're here to talk about
real people, real issues, and real talk.
Today on Mental Perk, we are joined by Steve Cunningham, founder of Simple and creator of the world's first AI business school. After building successful ventures, Steve is now transforming business education with a model that equips professionals for the AI-driven future. We are so excited to have you on the show today. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, we are too. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing and what you got into this. What got you into AI? And has it always been a passion of yours, or what drove you to this direction?
Like most people, I found out about AI when it was released to the public somewhere around November 2022. And I know some folks have been learning about it since, but I certainly did not have a background in AI. Had a little bit of background in the technology space and e-learning space. But we had a business leadership education company previously called Readitfor. And we realized very quickly that the AI was going to be able to essentially put us out of business. So we very quickly learned how to create content as good or better than what we were producing ourselves with AI, which means, of course, that everybody else can do that as well. And so we decided to take that idea all the way and started to think about how can we help organizations start to use AI in their businesses and help them do sort of what we started to do with AI, which was to really use it to streamline our operations and do a whole bunch of things that previously would have been impossible for us to do. So since then, we've been educating folks on how to use AI. We're training companies on how to help their employees adopt it productively, what pitfalls to look out for. And what we're most proud of is we are able to guarantee an ROI in every engagement that we go into, and also that we can track the actual number of productivity gains organizations are getting. And and I'm sure we'll get into this as we have this conversation, the thing that we are passionate about is helping organizations help their people flourish in this process as well, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. Some misinformation, some of it is good information about AI replacing jobs and what do you do if you find yourself in that situation. But ultimately, we believe this is a tool for good, and that if you take it seriously and dive into the deep end, as we like to say, it could be the best thing to come along for your career, probably in this lifetime.
And that is a number one thing that I obviously have been concerned about is, you don't see a lot of regulations yet, do you, on the AI that's coming out, all the AI technology that's coming out? I mean, there's a part of me that thinks that the AI world's moving faster than legislation is on it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think there is a definite lack of regulation. I know that that's being worked on, at least here in the U.S. I would, I guess, ask you the question of what are you concerned with?
Well, I think it's, like you said, you'd mentioned, and the job force. Yeah, I mean, we all know ChatGPT. I mean, there's some AI out there, AI platforms that are amazing, right? But when it talks about jobs and stuff in AI, I think that's where people get concerned of where is AI going to stop?
Yeah, I think like if we look at different industries, I think there is a fear, such as if AI starts being able to build cars or computers or takes over restaurants, that would people be out of work, or will the AI generate jobs in different ways?
Well, I think one of the things to wrestle with, or I guess maybe accept, is that that is going to happen. So AI is going to replace jobs. And the only question left would be, well, what do we do about it? And so if if you're watching what's happening and you're hoping that regulation is going to save your job, it's going to be too late, too little, too late. And the the people who are adopting AI and are using it in their roles, not only are they more productive, not only are they shown to be people companies want to keep around, what we have found is that they go through this psychological transformation as it's happening, where there's first this, it's kind of like our version of the 5 stages of grief, which is the first thing they have is fear or active resistance. So most people who have not really adopted AI full scale will either be worried about it or very much resist it doing their job. Usually people are okay with AI doing other people's jobs is when that starts to show that it can do their job that they get concerned. And so then they start to wrestle with it. Then they start to use it. And what they find is that there's this embarrassment phase when they start to use it and they realize, oh, this AI can do things that, I spent my entire life building these skills up to do. And it's like an emotional reckoning kind of moment. But as they progress through these stages, they ultimately get to the stage of productivity and then ultimate transformation. Like we've seen so many people go through this process where at the end of it, they are they have a sense of purpose again. They are hopeful for the future. So it's almost like the exact opposite of what people expect going into it. That is actually what tends to happen. And so it ultimately is going to happen. It's only a question of whether or not you're going to, start now or start later. And yeah, I don't, it's hard to have questions or discussions around like the whether or not we think it's good for society. Like ultimately it's so productive that there are no regulations that are going to come to save the day. It just doesn't make sense to like from a country perspective, we'd be at such a disadvantage to any other country that no country is going to completely eliminate AI. And so I guess that's my long-winded, inarticulate answer to that question. And I think the only question is how do you wrestle with it?
Or how do we change with it? Like, is there going to be ways that we change our education so that people getting out of high school and college can have ways of making money within an AI industry versus the way we educate kids and young adults now?
Yeah, so I have two young daughters who are one's in high school, one's about to be in high school. So they're old enough that I'm starting to think about that and what is the world going to be like when they are launched into the workforce. And it will, a couple things on this. One is in this, I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but I think it's not a hot take. Colleges and universities, even backtracking into high school, they don't do a good job of preparing people for the workforce. They don't come out job ready. So there's a whole bunch of education that needs to get people ready to do their job. What we've realized in the work that we're doing with companies is AI can be used to train people very quickly how to not only do their job, but how to use AI in their job. And so there's this opportunity for education providers to help students get prepared for the workforce and not only have all of the critical thinking skills and all the great things that come out of the education system, but also be ready on day one to be productive in the role with AI. And what we found is that people who are full-on adopters of AI are somewhere in the neighborhood of between 3 and 10 times more productive than people who don't use AI. So it's going to, just if you think about it in second and third order consequences, is going to just filter its way throughout the entire education system. And I've even got just yesterday I got a text message from a friend who's like, I'm literally taking his kids out of traditional school to get, and he's asking me like, what can I do to educate my kids on this? So, there's some people that are taking it to the extreme. But when you start to see things like that, you'll realize that the education space is going to be completely transformed. And in many ways, they have a lot of disincentives to adapt to this new way of education, because one of the biggest lessons that we've learned being in this space and showing organizations how to use it, particularly in corporate learning, is that the AI is the trainer. So the AI does an amazing job of teaching concepts and guiding people through exercises and doing all of the things that corporate education would do. So if you imagine like somebody currently graduates from high school, that this is why corporate learning and development departments exist, is because they're coming out of the education system not ready to be productive. They then teach people how to do their job and become better leaders and better communicators and all of those types of things. We have found the AI to be way more productive in filling that role than traditional corporate learning and development organizations. So yeah, again, another long-winded answer, but I think it is going to transform everything, and it is almost certainly going to very quickly filter its way through the education system.
So do you think with that filtering through the education system, do you think we're going to have just strictly AI teaching these kids, or do you think it's going to be assisted with teachers? I mean, I look at some of the stuff that's AI. It's amazing, right? It's so interesting to me. I think it's just, I can't wrap my head around how it learns as you learn, and it grows even faster and has, I don't even have the right words for it, but are we thinking that teachers will no longer be teachers?
I'm thinking in relation to what Brandy's saying, though, there are kids that learn differently, and so to take a teacher out of the classroom might impact their ability to learn. So it may be a combination of having that personal connection with the teacher, but also having that AI generated education as well.
Yeah. So when we are working with organizations, the approach that we take is we are going to, AI can do portions of jobs right now, and it can do them very well. Mostly it does not do an entire job completely. So it's not like you're going to just completely cut off, the example, it's not going to completely cut off the need for teachers. So the question is not, is it all AI or just the way we've always been doing it? But what does the future look like? What is a teacher who truly understands how to leverage AI to get the best possible outcome for the student? What does that look like? And that's kind of, it'll take time for it to filter throughout the system. And there's also the idea that the AI today is as bad as it's ever going to be. So it's not going to get worse. It's going to get better, and it's going to get exponentially better. And so it's going to be a continual learning and relearning of how do people interact with the technology and what parts of the jobs. So the way we look at it is you take a job description, and you figure out which of these things in your current job description can be done better with AI. Those things are just like, that's going to happen because if a machine can do the job better, ultimately the machine will do the job. So we get to focus on the things that are uniquely human skills. So, the social emotional impact. It's unlikely that, that's going to be replaced by AI anytime soon, but maybe it will. And as soon as it's clear that the outcomes are better, then it will. So I think the only people who will be guaranteed, losers in this game, if we want to put it that way, are the people who resist the change. The people who lean in will be the people that organizations keep around. And there will be a lot of pain in the way that this kind of works its way. It's going to be great for the economy. It's going to be bad for people who don't adopt it. And we're hearing stories all the time of people, large parts of departments just being laid off. And the people that are left behind who still have a job are the people who have figured out how to use the AI productively. So I don't want to make it seem like it's going to be this great utopia. I'm sure there's be a lot of pain for a lot of people, but the only way to increase your chances of avoiding that would be to go all in on it, I think.
Yeah, but in a way, though, I hear what you're saying as far as increased productivity with the AI and stuff. But once you do that, and the AI is actually doing a lot, it could be doing a job for 10 people, right? One person could take over 10 people's job by learning. I'm just putting a number out there, not 10 necessarily, but is it possible that one, to where you're able to cut costs as corporations, to where you don't have as much personnel that you have to hire? You're relying on the AI and the people that are embracing the AI tech?
Yeah, that's exactly is exactly what can happen. It's exactly what is happening and will continue to happen. So there's stories of any roles where you wouldn't expect it. Like one example is somebody who was recently laid off from a data science department from a large company. A couple of years ago, data science was like the most rock solid, new shiny career you could get into, and entire multi-$100 million buildings are being built in universities. With the data science campus and all of those good things. Those jobs are getting wiped out, and left behind from 40 people is like 2 people. So it's sometimes worse than better or worse depending on how you're looking at it than those numbers. And the only question again will be, number one, how do you make sure you're the one or two people left behind, if that's important to you? If you do find yourself in the 38 or 39, you need to figure out what's next. And the only thing that will be next is how do you start adopting AI in your role? So that's, I think large companies there's going to be a lot of that happening. I think the good news for most people is that most organizations want to grow. And they don't want to replace people. They just want to be more productive. So most of the people that we work with are way more interested in, okay, we've got a lot of the busy work out of these people's hands. What else can they do? And now that we've equipped them with this new tool that turns them into something way more productive than they were before, how can we turn that into an asset for the company? So I think the reality is, again, large companies are going to slash costs. That's just part of the deal. And they are finding the ability to replace jobs with AI. They will continue to do it, and it'll continue to happen. Smaller organizations want to grow.
Industries where AI could be so very beneficial, in like you're talking about corporations and accounting firms, taxes, lawyers, all of those different things. The one area that may be safe is more labor intensive work, such as construction, and areas where people, you can't use AI to replace those people necessarily. I guess better tools would be a way to use it.
Yeah, I think for the short run, that the manual labor is obviously a space where the things will be safer. You can't replace manual labor for the most part, especially specialized manual labor with robots yet. But I think it's also that's also, if you're trying to minimize risk, yeah, that would be one of the things to do, and is go get a manual labor job. Those are less likely to be washed out. But I think the real benefit for most folks is how can, if you're able to be 10 times more productive than almost everybody else who's applying for this role at a company, the opportunities are also much greater for people who are adopting AI. So I think if you're making decisions out of fear, it'll lead you to one spot. If you're making decisions out of hope and ambition, it's going to lead you somewhere else. And so I think we need to balance the fear side of it with how can we help give people hope that there's a brighter future for them.
Is the AI industry, is that going to advance a lot faster than people can learn the skills associated with that to be able to keep their jobs? I kind of feel like AI is advancing way faster than people are going to be able to keep up with it.
Well, I think one of the things that we have found in the work that we're doing and being deep into the space is the tools are actually incredibly easy to use, and they're going to get easier and easier to use. So very soon you'll be able to, and this to some extent exists already today. Just talk to the computer and it'll start doing tasks for you. Like that's the world we're going to live into. Is you tell the AI, I want you to go do this thing. It can start using your computer for you and start to execute on tasks. That's what's most likely coming next year. If what the major AI companies are saying is to be believed, sometimes you can believe them. Sometimes, it's a little bit of a show for, keeping people engaged with what they're doing. But ultimately, the tools, and this is why this is so great for the people who are picking it up, is like you don't need any technical expertise to use these tools. It has literally gone from needing to know how to code to build a software program or to build a website or to do many technical things to you can literally just tell it in plain English what you want. And so I think that's one of the misconceptions is that, so yes, to answer your question, the technology is advancing faster than most people realize. The adoption is probably going slower than most of the AI companies would have hoped. But the ease of use of these tools is just going to continue to get easier and easier and easier. And it levels the playing field for many people.
I think what's contributing to people's inability to really embrace it fully is the fact that people just have a fear of the unknown. This is coming about in such a quick way that so it's kind of those kind of things I feel are feeding that fear of the unknown.
Yeah, and I totally get it. It for me, it was actually imposed on me. So I realized very quickly that AI was going to put our business out of business within a relatively short amount of time, and so I needed to move quickly. So I went through that fear and anxiety just like everybody else. So that's just going to happen. But the fear of how do you deal with how do you deal with the fear of the unknown? Well, you deal with it. You get into it and you start to face your fears. And again, what most people are finding when they face their fear of this is that this is a positive, transformative experience. And we always tell companies when we're working with them that this is not a technology problem. The technology works. It's amazing. It's guaranteed ROI when you use it. Your people are more like, there's no question that it will happen. The only problem is you need to get people to use it. And that's a psychology problem. And creating the psychological safety for people to interact with it and to start using it publicly in their roles is the actual problem to be solved. So I think it's the same thing for anybody. There is only one outcome here that will ultimately play itself out, and that is people with using AI in the most productive way are going to win. They're going to win the jobs. They're going to win the business. They're going to do, and the people who don't are going to ultimately find themselves on the other end of that equation, which is going to create a lot of pain for them. So we're really passionate about telling the story of this is a psychology issue. We need to educate people on the tools, but mostly we need to shepherd them through a process of learning how to wrestle with those fears, how to make them feel safe, that they're ultimately companies are going to do what companies do. We like to work with organizations that want to grow their people and not get rid of them. So that's the message we're trying to bring.
I feel like they have an understanding of those fears, and then they also have an understanding of using the technology in a certain way that can maybe reduce people's fears. I mean, that kind of bridges our gap between, what you're talking about regarding the business schools and the companies that you work with and mental health care or medical health care, because those two fields are very different. And a lot of it, there's we're driven by HIPAA compliance. A lot of that is, and so how does AI fit in there? What role can it play in the medical and the mental health world? And I think, I think psychologists are doing a good job of bridging the gap from business to healthcare. I think I was just making a comment on just kind of bridging what you're doing and then kind of where our specialty is, and that's in that mental health and in healthcare arena.
Yeah, so I think the AI is going to be very productive in helping people deal with mental health issues. Like I had a mental health company before this company as well. So I, certainly not as well versed in the area as you are, but for instance, you could very easily get the AI to walk you through every single cognitive behavioral therapy treatment, and it works. It works well. The AI is natural. It does a lot of things really well. So I think in every single industry, we need to think about what does the human being do? What is the value the human being brings to the table? And then how do we let the AI do what it can do? When it's clear that it can do it as good or better than the human can, it's time to offload that work to AI and learn how else do we add value in this new world that we're going to live in. So, which in itself is like a mental health exercise, because it's just going to play itself out. I think there are a lot of industries. You mentioned where regulation is going to come in. Like heavily regulated industries will move a lot slower than non heavily regulated industries. So healthcare is going to move slower in AI than the hot dog stand down the street, to use a really bad example. So but it's coming. And as soon as it's very clear, like I said, that the AI is doing something as good or better than the human being can, and it's safe to do so, then it is just going to be a matter of time before that happens. And the part about the AI doing it as good or better than the human being that line will be continuously moved. So most people make the mistake when they're using a technology to think, wow, this is what this technology will always be like, when it's actually gets better, day over day, week over week. And so the line keeps getting moved, and ultimately, the only question is, how far will that line go? And most people believe it's going to go very far.
Yeah, and I think it could even, that's affected by a theoretical approach. If we look at, like you talked about a second ago, cognitive behavioral therapy, very skills-based, same as a dialectical behavioral therapy. They're going to be very skills-based, which could be definitely taught by an AI, a way of teaching. But then you look at a more person-centered approach, which might be something better fit for someone going through trauma or grief. That might be something that is more, has a better personal touch with a personal therapist. So I think there's going to be a balance of using different theoretical approaches with different kinds of issues regarding mental health.
Yeah, I was going to say, so the way we help people think about this is, like, even that is something theoretically that could be done by the AI. Like, what is the best approach here? And that's a cognitive task that a therapist or a psychologist or a psychiatrist goes through. So the premise we start with is almost all cognitive work will eventually be done with AI. And what does that mean? And so the only question is, can it do it well today? And so, maybe there are situations where we want to make sure that we don't take the human out of the loop. And I'm sure there are, many examples of that in the healthcare system, where we need to make sure there's a human being in the loop at all times. But I think, assuming that, well, the AI can do this, but it can't do that, that wall just keeps getting broken down over and over and over again. So I think the example of deciding which approach is best and then helping the person do that approach or apply that approach, like, you can take the AI all the way in many cases. And so, again, I think it's just as soon as somebody figures out how to do that safely, it will be done. And so I encourage everybody to try to take it all the way. And when it's clear that it works, use it. And when it's clear that it doesn't do a good job, don't use it. but don't ignore it.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you think our students, though, Steve, when this, because they're already starting, our kids in college and, grade school, they're already starting to, play with AI. Do you think that it's going to make these kids think more critically with all the AI assistance? Or do you think that's kind of what I think as a parent, like, I would be concerned with younger kids now, like, are they going to take advantage of the AI and actually learn from it? Or are they going to just let AI do their job and them lack all the education that they would have learned without AI assistance? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I can only tell you my experience so far. So my experience with my kids is they don't use it very much. So I, or at least I don't know that they're using it. I suspect that they don't because we never talk about it. And they know that I do a lot of work in AI and I use it all the time. So I think the getting people to adopt a new technology is harder than most people think. So I think that is a barrier. Like we're gonna have to work really hard to get kids to adopt it at all. So that's number one. I think number two is there is a fear, and I hear this from again, you always hear the defenses from people who will say AI can do. I'm happy for AI to do everything else, but it certainly can't do X. Like everybody has their favorite example of what AI can't do. And so my personal experience has been my critical thinking skills have gotten way better with AI because it helps me think critically. And it's specifically because they have produced OpenAI specifically, the reasoning models. That is a recent development this year. And it does an amazing job of very, very quickly helping you think through multi-step problems and reason well towards good decisions in whatever it is that you're doing. And it can help you consider, hundreds of factors all at once, and you can do it almost instantaneously. So I think I've been using it. I think the biggest benefit that I have gotten out of using AI is as a critical thinking thought partner, making big decisions in my business and in my life. So I think if it's just like anything else, you get there's a danger that it'll be used to turn their brains off. But I think there's a good chance that if we show them what can be done with it, that they'll use it to turn their brain on. And so I think it'll just play itself out like things always do. There's going to be lazy kids who will do the bare minimum, but those people will not have the best jobs. And the people who lean into the technology and use it to its full capacity will be the ones that succeed. And I think that dynamic has always been true. And I think it'll continue to be even more true in the future because the difference between somebody who uses it well and somebody who doesn't use it well is amplified significantly.
I think it's interesting because a lot of the schools are pushing back. So kids are not allowed to use chat GPT or any of those when they're writing papers, and they can actually get a failing grade if they do. So what I also am curious about though is as computers became more relevant in education, we saw that kids or even calculators, kids' math skills started to fall off. And then with the computers and word processing, we found off writing skills and grammar and all of those things started to fall off. I'm wondering, are we going to take away the ability of these kids to critically think, or are they going to be solely reliant on all of these things that we're giving, all these tools that we're giving them, and not use their brain in such a way that it develops its own ability to process?
Nobody is arguing anymore that we shouldn't use calculators. Nobody's arguing anymore that we shouldn't use computers, and then the same will be true of AI. So will it change the way we interact with the world? Absolutely. But there's no doubt that in the overall grand scheme of things, it's going to make things better and not worse. There's always the technology or the next thing that's going to be the end of the world. And I think there's most of the people who have the biggest concerns about those types of things being true are the people who are not using it productively. And the way I like to describe it is like how when you're talking to your kids, like how are you sure you don't like broccoli or you've never tried broccoli? You just don't know. And so I think there is a definite there's going to be a definite change in how kids interact with the world and how they are productive in the world, and it'll be different than when we grew up. But again, it's back to that idea, like nobody's suggesting we shouldn't have calculators, nobody's suggesting that we shouldn't have computers, and in 20 years, nobody's going to be saying, you know, we should go back to when we didn't have AI.
Well, and I'm just thinking with with all the texting people do now, and everything's in shorthand and unpunctuated, and then you go to try to write a paper or you try to write something professional. People can't do it anymore. They can't speak in full sentences. They can't, and so it's very interesting to see, how the technology affects our ability to function without it, like in real life.
Absolutely, that's going to happen. So I find myself, this is just a really small example, but you don't need to type words correctly into the AI for it to understand what you're saying. So I type really fast. I don't fix my spelling mistakes when I'm using AI. And ultimately, what that has done is I'm now way worse at when I need to write an email. I'm way worse at typing it out. I'm much slower now at it because I'm misspelling words all, left, right, and center. But do I think as a net overall that my life is better because of AI? Absolutely. So I think we need to look at these things in, not to be cliche, but the grand scheme of things. So will some skills decline? Yes. But will the net overall effect be positive for society, which I think is the ultimate goal? Yes. So, I was a math major in college, and so, I am horrible at arithmetic, but the math that I was doing was critical. It was helping me become a critical thinker, and so I feel like the it'll play itself out, but the technology is so transformative and so productive overall that even if that is true, it's worth it.
So yeah, I think this has been very interesting. I feel like, again, we have to find a way to have that parallel development with the AI process as we're making those changes. And I do feel like the AI is going to advance quicker than we change. And so that's going to be, I think where mentally people are going to really have to find a way to figure out how to function in that new world like you're talking about, because you're either going to be left behind or you're going to find a way to keep up. And so it's going to be kind of the survival of the fittest in a way.
Yeah, it is, in the US, it's always been survival of the fittest, and it'll continue to be that way. And I think you need to keep that in mind as the reality, and there will be winners and losers, and that's not I think thinking about it as a moral issue is ignoring the reality of what's going to happen. So whether or not I believe this is the right thing is irrelevant to what's going to happen. It's going to happen, and people who are 10 times more productive than the next person are going to be rewarded, and the people who don't come along for the ride will not. And so I think it is I am sure there'll be regulations around it that will attempt to slow it down. But I just don't think, practically speaking, that will happen, because the disadvantage it'll put us against other countries that are not doing that, the trade-off will not be worth it. So I think from like an individual perspective and from like the people you care about perspective, the only answer, the only end game here that is reasonable is they should start using the tools immediately. They should try to think about how to completely integrate it into their life in a way that is productive and that is helpful. And I think, from I think social media has been, and you know this, being in the mental health space, that is a destructive technology. I've believe that this technology, AI, is going to be a positive transformational force for people. I've not found any studies suggesting that people that use AI are struggling with their mental health. I suspect when we start doing those studies and they come out, you'll see that it is helpful for their mental health. So I'd be interested to see those studies. Let's put it that way.
I think my biggest concern is that, yes, I think, obviously AI is the future, correct? And, I worry about, we've got kids that are doctors. Is AI going to take over them from being the physicians and the surgeons that they are? And then, you've got, my biggest concern is, let's say something catastrophic happens. Have we become so reliant on the AI that if AI no longer exists, are we going to know how to function as a society doing the basic skills that we learned prior to AI?
That's a really good point. Just thinking about power outages and things that, if people are so reliant on it, that could be devastating to our economy.
Like those kinds of questions, like what comes to my mind is, okay, but what are you going to do about it? And I think the reasonable thing to do if you're thinking about yourself or you're thinking about your like you just mentioned, like, will it take over your kids' doctors' roles? Maybe, and maybe it will, but sitting around and worrying about it isn't going to change the fact of whether or not it's going to happen. And the AI is going to continue to march forward. It's going to continue to transform jobs. It's going to take away jobs from people who don't use it. So I think dealing with the reality of it, rather than worrying about it, which I think would be a common thing you would mention to a client who had been struggling with their mental health, is the healthy way to deal with it. Unless you're actually going to have influence on policy and those types of things, from an individual perspective, I think taking care of your family, taking care of your friends, the only reasonable thing to do is you need to learn this and learn it now. So I leave that's my approach to this for, thinking deeply about the people that I care about, is there's no way I'm going to have any influence on the regulations that come or don't come. Whether or not this is good or not for society is irrelevant. My opinion on that is irrelevant. It's going to happen, and what do we do about it, and how do we make sure that the outcome is as good as it can be for the people that we love and we care about? And that, I think, is, again, the only reasonable advice that I would give to anybody, or in my mind, is the only reasonable advice you can give to somebody in this situation.
Well, in my mind, yes, I think finding a way to go along with it is very important, and finding a way to accept that, but also not letting our skills, the skills that we have learned over time, we need to make sure that we don't default on those, that we keep those up, and make sure that we're practicing those things, and really finding a way to find a healthy balance between AI and our own ability to process and succeed and do all the things that we normally do. One of my biggest thoughts on this is AI is man-made, right? So it has the ability to make mistakes. It also has the ability to generate misinformation. And so that is also a concern. And if we're so reliant on using it, how do we test and make sure that the information it is providing is accurate?
Yeah, those are all reasonable questions to ask. And I think that would be part of a healthy way of adopting the AI. You're not just going to take everything it says as the gospel truth, and that is the exact right thing to do. You're going to take it on as something that can help you in a particular role. So, as we real quick example, as we're looking at, okay, does this do a good job of summarizing a book, and can it do it faster than the way we were doing it? So as part of our business is we would summarize business books. We didn't just assume that it could do it better than us, but we tested it. And what we found was that, yes, indeed, it, especially now, versus a couple of years ago, it does a way better job of doing that work, and it does it in way less time. And so you will always want to stress test the ability to actually produce a positive outcome. So it's not like you just accept the fact that the AI produces a positive outcome. You test it and you make sure that it does, because you don't want to blindly rely on something when it's not clear that it's going to be helpful. But once it's clear that it's helpful, you should adopt it in that specific circumstance. So my concern with a lot of the conversations around this, like, isn't it, all of the red flags that people throw up is preventing them from exploring. And I know for a fact that it prevents a lot of people from exploring the technology. And that would be my bigger concern for folks that I care about, is that they'll wait until it's too late. The story we like to tell to drive this point home comes from a book called The Black Swan. And there's an anecdote in that book around the idea of don't be a turkey, where the turkey feels has an amazing life and it's being taken care of and nurtured and fed every day, and the life is good until Thanksgiving dinner comes along, and all of a sudden, life is not so good anymore. So I think the best approach for, again, going back to, like, if the people you care about, would be find as many possible ways for this to be useful for you. Stress test it, make sure that it's useful. Don't just blindly use it in situations where you're not clear if this is going to be a net positive outcome for you, but explore it everywhere. Do not make any assumptions that this technology cannot be used in a certain place, because what is happening right now is that there are millions of people out there who are exploring the bounds of what these tools can do. And the people who find out those use cases will start the next business that will put the next group of people out of work. So that is just what is going to happen. And so again, I always go back to, I'm thinking about it from, my kids' perspective. The societal impacts will play themselves out, and just like they have with every other technology that has come along. But I would be very concerned for people who don't try to take it all the way, because it's like it's almost like reverse fear mongering a little bit. At least I view it that I have a moral obligation to my kids to make sure that they use this in a way that is productive for them. And the only way they'll find that out is to use it.
Information, and we are so thankful that you came on to the show today. How does someone reach out to you, Steve, if they want more information about how you help people with their businesses? Can you give us some information about that?
Yeah, I would love to have them visit our website, simpleacademy.ai. They can sign up for some free resources there and start to take their own journey into the world of AI.
Yeah, the neat thing is Brandy and I, through the help of our producer, we are now using more AI, and we have found our job has gotten a little bit easier, a whole lot easier. Yeah. We are so less stressed over things that we were stressing over. So we do see the benefits of it. We do see how it's creeping into our world, and it's going to be interesting to see how other industries pick this up and really adapt to it.
Well, I wish you all the best and good luck, and I really appreciate you having me on. It's been a fun conversation.
If you or anyone you know is struggling with mental health issues, please reach out to talk to someone you trust. Get connected to a mental health professional who can help you find ways to cope and ultimately feel better. If you are having suicidal or self-harm thoughts or thoughts of hurting another person, please go to the nearest ER, call 911, or contact the National Suicide Hotline at 988. Thank you for tuning in to Mental Perk. We hope our talk today highlighted real people working through real issues based on mental health. Our goal at Mental Perk is to make sure every one of you knows you're worthy. We're in this together.